My name is Elena Marlowe. I'm 32 years old, and my fiancé ended our relationship with a text message from his bachelor weekend. The wedding was supposed to be in 3 months. Now I'm sitting alone in a silent condo, staring at a box of cream-colored invitations I paid to have embossed, thinking about how quickly a life can turn from polished to absurd. It happened on a Thursday night at 11:17 p.m. My fiancé, Adrian Cole, 30, was out of town for a 3-day bachelor trip with his friends. His best man, Derek, had organized the whole thing. I had told myself I was fine with it. More than fine, actually. The condo was quiet. I had a glass of sparkling water on the coffee table, my laptop open, a half-finished show playing in the background. It felt strange being alone in the place we were supposed to turn into a marriage. But it wasn't a bad strange, just temporary. At 11:17, my phone lit up. Adrian. I smiled automatically before I opened it. Then I read the message. Adrian. Hey, so this is going to sound awful. I ran into Vanessa tonight. We ended up back at her hotel and accidentally slept together. We talked for hours after, and I realized I'm not over her. We're getting back together. We're flying to the coast tomorrow, so I'm not coming back tonight. Sorry, this is last minute. I stared at the screen, not blinking, not breathing, just staring. There are moments when your body refuses to catch up to what your eyes already know. That was one of them. My heart didn't race. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel heat. It was the opposite of heat. It was as if somebody had poured cold metal into my veins and let it settle there. I read it again. Then the second text came through. Adrian. Also, I'm keeping the ring. It makes more sense for my future now. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Derek can get the rest of my stuff next week. I'm keeping the ring. That line snapped the numbness into focus. Not because of the betrayal. Not even because he had already reassigned the future we were supposed to have together to another woman before the night was over. The ring. That ring had been a whole production. A 3.5-carat custom diamond ring from a luxury jeweler Adrian had chosen himself. He didn't just want a beautiful ring. He wanted the story of the ring, the exclusivity, the showroom, the appointment-only experience, the leather tray, the chilled champagne, the sales associate who used words like legacy and investment and heirloom as if we were buying a crown. I still remembered the way Adrian leaned back in that chair, smiling like he belonged there. Elena, he'd said, squeezing my hand, if we do this, I want it done right. What he actually meant was, I want it to look expensive. He worked in luxury branding. Appearance wasn't just important to him, it was oxygen. At the jeweler, he had insisted on opening the store credit line in his name. It helps my profile, he'd said lightly, like it was obvious. A line like this matters. It shows scale, it shows purchasing power. I should have heard the warning under the polished words. But I was in love, and love can make elegant nonsense sound like maturity. The arrangement was simple. The debt was his. The ring was supposed to be for me, and I, as his fiancé, would cover the monthly payments as part of our shared future. $2,500 a month, auto-drafted from my account to the jeweler credit line in his name. I had already paid 4 of them, $10,000. For the ring, he had just informed me he was keeping for his future with Vanessa. I looked at his message again. Then I typed one word. Me, thanks. I don't know what expression crossed his face when he read it. Confusion, maybe. Annoyance. Maybe he expected begging. Maybe rage. Maybe paragraphs. Maybe a woman unraveling on cue so he could feel justified in leaving her. Instead, I opened my banking app, found the recurring payment labeled Adrian Ring, canceled it, effective immediately. Then I opened my email. I found the latest statement from the jeweler, attached the PDF, and started a new message. Subject, our arrangement. Body, per your text, our arrangement is over. The account is in your name. The ring is in your possession. Future payments are your responsibility. Thanks. I hit send. Then I stood up. The condo felt different already. Not haunted. Clarified. We lived in my condo. I had bought it 5 years before I met him. My name was the only one on the deed. The mortgage was mine. The utilities were mine. Adrian contributed a small amount every month that never came close to actual market rent because we had been building a life together and I had treated that like something sacred. I walked to the front panel and changed the smart lock code. Then I emailed an attorney my cousin had used during a property dispute. Subject, urgent consultation, broken engagement, /cohabitation, /asset protection. I explained everything in clean, unemotional lines. He is not on the deed. He has left the city with his ex-girlfriend. He has stated in writing that he is not returning. Please advise. Then I opened our wedding spreadsheet, the one we had color-coded. Venue, caterer, music, florals, transportation. All those tiny little boxes of certainty. The non-refundable deposits alone came to nearly $15,000. Mine. Every single one from my accounts. I started sending cancellation emails one by one. My engagement has ended. Please confirm cancellation of all services for the scheduled event. I understand deposits are non-refundable pursuant to contract. I sent 12 emails. By then, it was after 1 in the morning. I logged out of the shared streaming accounts. Changed passwords. Removed his devices. Opened the hall closet and looked at his jackets. The expensive ones first. The carefully structured ones he liked to wear when he wanted rooms to notice him. For a second, grief rose in me so suddenly, it almost felt physical. Not because I missed him, because I saw all at once how much of myself I had poured into making his life look effortless. I went into the kitchen and made coffee, even though it was too late for coffee and too early for morning, and none of that mattered anymore. At some point, I carried the box of wedding invitations to the recycling chute. The weight surprised me. That was the thing about betrayal. It always looked sleek from a distance, clean, decisive. But up close, it had weight, paper weight, deposit weight, legal weight, key code weight, the weight of face cream bottles in a bathroom cabinet and dress shoes under a bench and a ring payment due in 5 days. I dropped the invitations into the chute and listened to the soft collapsing sound they made on the way down. When I finally slept, it was for maybe 3 hours. At 8:14 a.m., I woke up to a reply from the attorney. He could speak to me at 9. I showered, pulled my hair back, made fresh coffee, and sat at the dining table looking at the empty space where the invitation box had been. The condo was quiet in a new way now. Not peaceful, waiting. Because Adrian was somewhere on a plane to the coast with Vanessa, probably looking very pleased with himself, probably admiring the ring he thought he had successfully folded into his next chapter. And in 5 days, the first missed payment notice was going to hit his inbox. He still thought he had walked away carrying an asset. He had no idea he was wearing a liability on his way to paradise. The call with the attorney lasted 32 minutes. His name was Daniel Hart. His tone was calm in a way that didn't try to comfort. It just organized things. Let's go step by step, he said. Ownership first. The condo is solely in your name. Yes. No cosign, no shared deed, no written agreement granting him residency rights beyond informal cohabitation? No. Good. Not warm. Not sympathetic. Just good. He asked for the timeline. When Adrian moved in. Whether he had ever contributed toward the mortgage. Whether there were any shared assets beyond routine living expenses. Then we got to the ring. I explained it cleanly. He opened the credit line in his name. The ring was intended for me. I had been making the monthly payments. He ended the engagement. He kept the ring. I stopped paying. There was a pause. Then, that's straightforward, Daniel said. The account holder is liable. You have no legal obligation to continue payments on a debt in his name, especially given the engagement has been terminated by him. Straightforward. That word landed heavier than it should have. Because nothing about the last 12 hours felt simple. What about him coming back here? I asked. He can request access to retrieve personal belongings, Daniel said, but he cannot re-enter the residence without your permission. If you're concerned about conflict, we can arrange a civil standby with local police. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I want that. Good choice. There was a brief pause before he added, I also recommend documenting everything from this point forward. Messages, timestamps, any attempts at contact. You're already doing that, correct? Yes, I assumed. We ended the call with a plan. No ambiguity. No emotional negotiation. Just structure. At 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Derek. I let it ring once before answering. Hey, he said, voice cautious. I just talked to him. Okay. He said you canceled the ring payments. I did. A pause. Then, he's not happy. I didn't expect him to be. Derek exhaled quietly. He thinks you're overreacting. Of course he did. Because in his version of events, the only thing that had changed was the woman standing next to him. Everything else was supposed to remain intact. What exactly does he think is happening right now? I asked. That you'll cool off, Derek said. That this is temporary. Temporary. I leaned back in my chair. That's interesting. He's on a plane, Elena, Derek added. He's not thinking clearly. No, I said. He's thinking exactly the way he always does. Another pause. Look, I'm not defending him, Derek said quickly. I'm just saying, he didn't plan for any of this to spiral. Spiral. That word almost made me laugh. You mean he didn't plan for consequences? Derek didn't argue, because there wasn't anything to argue. He wants to come by next week, Derek said instead. Grab his stuff. He said you agreed. I didn't agree to anything. He thinks you did. I sent an email outlining terms, I said. Pickup will happen under supervision. He does not enter beyond the entryway. Jesus, that's the situation. There was a long silence on the line. Then Derek said something softer. He didn't think you'd go this far. I stood up and walked to the window. The city looked the same. Traffic moving. People crossing. Nothing on the outside reflecting the shift that had already happened inside my life. I didn't think he would either, I said. Derek let out a breath. Fair. We ended the call there. No resolution. No attempt to bridge anything. Just two people acknowledging a reality that had already settled into place. Around noon, my email started filling with responses. The venue confirmed cancellation. The caterer. The florist. Each message polite, professional, final. We're sorry to hear this. As outlined in your contract, deposits are non-refundable. $15,000. Gone. But there was something strange about reading those emails. I didn't feel panic or regret. Just distance. Because that money had been tied to a future that no longer existed. It wasn't a loss. It was a closure fee. At 1:12 p.m., another message came through. Unknown number. I opened it. Adrian, you canceled the payments. No greeting. No context. Just accusation. I stared at the screen for a second before replying. Me, yes. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Disappeared. Then came back. Then disappeared again. Finally, Adrian, why would you do that? I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't have an answer. Because I wanted to see if he could reach it on his own. Another message came through. Adrian, Elena, be reasonable. That's not how this works. There it was. Not confusion. Not curiosity. Correction. He thought I had broken a rule. I typed slowly. Me. You ended the engagement. You kept the ring. The account is in your name. That's how this works. The typing indicator appeared again. This time it stayed. Longer. Then, Adrian, you're being emotional. I almost smiled, because it was so predictable, so cleanly in character. Your emotional wasn't an observation. It was a tool, a way to reduce whatever I was doing into something irrational, so he didn't have to engage with it on its actual terms. I didn't respond. A minute later, another message. Adrian, we can figure this out when I get back. Just don't do anything else right now. Don't do anything else. Like I was supposed to freeze my life in place while he restructured his. I locked my phone, set it face down on the table, and went back to my email. By late afternoon, everything was either canceled or confirmed canceled. The wedding no longer existed anywhere except in contracts that had already been fulfilled and money that was already gone. At 5:03 p.m., Daniel emailed me. Subject, next steps. He outlined the civil standby process. Suggested dates. Advised against direct communication with Adrian beyond written formats. And added one line at the end that stayed with me. You are in a strong position. Maintain it. Strong position. Not emotionally. Not morally. Structurally. That was the difference. Adrian had always optimized for appearance. For how things looked. How they landed. How they were perceived. I had optimized for something else without realizing it. Stability. Ownership. Documentation. The unglamorous parts that don't impress anyone until they're the only things that matter. At 7:40 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Derek. I let it ring out. Then a text came through. Derek, he's freaking out about the ring. I didn't reply. A second message followed. Derek. I don't think he realized how much he still owed. Of course he didn't. Because for Adrian, numbers had always been abstract. Flexible. Secondary to presentation. The ring wasn't a liability to him. It was an image. A symbol. Something to be seen. Something to be used. Until it wasn't. I picked up my phone. Typed one message. Then deleted it. There was nothing I needed to say. Because the shift had already happened. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. In systems. In ownership. In consequences beginning to move on their own. And somewhere between the missed payment that was now inevitable and the trip he was currently on, Adrian's version of this story was already starting to break. He just didn't know it yet. The quiet lasted less than a week. 5 days to be exact. 5 days of silence so clean it almost felt staged. I went to work, answered emails, took calls, came home to a condo that already felt different in small, unmistakable ways. His half of the closet no longer felt shared. It felt vacant. The extra mug in the cabinet looked unnecessary. The bathroom shelf looked like a negotiation that had ended overnight. Then Tuesday arrived. The payment date. At 11:22 a.m., While I was at my desk pretending to care about quarterly logistics, my phone started vibrating across the wood surface hard enough to make the pen beside it rattle. Derek. I watched it ring. Stopped. Then voicemail. A minute later, another call. Declined. Then a text. Derek, can you please call me? This is getting ridiculous. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway. Elena, hey, Adrian's having some kind of issue with the jeweler account. He got an email saying the payment is late, and his card got declined at lunch because he moved money around expecting that payment to clear. He says you always handled it. If this is some misunderstanding, can you just fix it? This is really humiliating for him. Humiliating for him. I sat back in my chair and stared at the wall behind my monitor. Not shocking. Not infuriating. Just exactly what I should have expected. He cheats, he leaves. He keeps the ring. And somehow the emergency is that lunch was embarrassing. I deleted the voicemail. 40 minutes later, his mother called. Celeste Cole had the kind of voice that was always dressed better than the truth. Smooth, expensive, artificial. She could make an insult sound like etiquette if she wanted to. I let it ring twice, then answered. Elena, darling, she said with immediate syrup, I'm hearing some very confusing things from Adrian. Then this should be simple, I said. He ended our engagement Thursday night by text. He left with Vanessa. There is no wedding. Silence. Not long. Just long enough for her to understand that I was not going to help her stage manage reality. Well, she said finally, her tone hardening, that is obviously unfortunate and emotional and not the point at the moment. The point is the ring account. Adrian received a very upsetting notice. His payment is late. Yes, I said. Another silence. I could almost hear her blinking. Yes, she repeated. Yes, it's late. Elena, don't be childish. I'm not being childish. I canceled my payments. Her inhale sharpened. You did what? The ring account is in Adrian's name. The ring is in Adrian's possession. He informed me he's keeping it for his future. That made the arrangement very easy to reevaluate. Her voice changed then. The sugar burned off completely. You cannot do this to him. I already did. He proposed to you with that ring. He also abandoned me with it. You promised to make those payments. I promised to make those payments as his fiancé. You don't just revoke a gift because you're upset. I looked down at the spreadsheet still open on my laptop. $15,000 in deposits, $10,000 in ring payments. $25,000 evaporated because a man wanted one last dramatic self-reinvention before 31. This isn't a gift issue, I said. It's a consequences issue. She gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You're trying to ruin his credit over a mistake. A mistake? You know what I mean. No, I said quietly. I actually don't. Her voice rose. It was a lapse in judgment. People are imperfect. Adults work things out. But this is vindictive. Adrian does not have $2,500 a month available to absorb that payment on short notice. I let that sit there between us. Because that was the whole truth, wasn't it? He had never had it. Not really. He had liked choosing the ring, liked carrying the debt when he believed someone else would service it, liked the appearance of affording something he never intended to actually afford. You know his budget, she pressed. You know the pressure he's under. Vanessa certainly cannot help him with this. You are trapping him. I'm trapping him, I repeated, by not continuing to pay for the ring he is keeping while living with the woman he left me for. He is not wearing it, she snapped. I almost smiled. Interesting. So she knew less than I did. Maybe Adrian hadn't told her everything. Maybe he had framed it differently at home. Maybe in his version, he was a sad romantic who had followed his heart, not a man who texted his fiancé like he was canceling dinner plans. He still has it, I said. And whether it's in a pocket, a box, or on a chain around his neck, the account is his. That landed. I could hear the rage building under her silence now, searching for shape. Finally, she said, cold and clipped, You are being unbelievably cruel. No, I said, I'm being finished. Then I ended the call and blocked her number. That should have been enough for one day. It wasn't. At 8:07 that night, the building intercom buzzed. I was on the couch, barefoot, still in work clothes, with a bowl of takeout I had barely touched. The sound cut through the condo so sharply it felt hostile. I stood up, crossed the living room, and hit the receiver. Yes? Elena, open the damn door. Adrian. His voice came through the speaker, distorted but unmistakable, furious, breathless, already performing outrage. The code isn't working, he snapped. What the hell did you do? I leaned one shoulder against the wall. All communication goes through Daniel, I said. Are you serious right now? Yes. My clothes are in there, my laptop, my watches. Open the door. You were given written instructions to arrange pickup. Oh my God. He laughed once, sharp and ugly. Are you actually trying to pretend I don't live there? You said you weren't coming back. That was not legal notice, Elena. That was me ending an engagement. You also said Derek could get your things next week. That doesn't mean you get to lock me out of my home. My home. There it was. Not grief. Not apology. Possession. It's not your home, I said. His voice dropped. Open. The door. No. Silence on the line. Then, lower, more dangerous. You want to do this in front of people? I glanced toward the peephole, though I already knew what I'd see if I looked. His jaw tight, shoulders rigid, one hand shoved through his hair, the way he did when he wanted to seem frayed and sympathetic at the same time. You already did it in front of people, I said. Just not me. What is that supposed to mean? It means go through the attorney. I heard another voice behind him then. A woman. Vanessa. Muffled at first, then clearer. Is she seriously not letting you in? Of course she came. Of course he brought her to my building. To the condo I bought. The condo I furnished. The condo where my wedding invitations had been sitting 6 days ago. Something inside me went very still. Adrian, I said, leave. You don't get to talk to me like that in my own... I hung up. The intercom buzzed again immediately. Then again. Then my phone started ringing from an unknown number. Then a text. Adrian, open the door or I'm calling the police. I typed back. Me, please do. It took them 32 minutes. I know because I timed it. In that half hour, I put on shoes, pulled my hair into a cleaner knot, printed the deed Daniel had told me to keep accessible, and set my phone open on the counter to the text thread. I was not shaking. That surprised me. Maybe because by then there was nothing left to save. No version of the night ended with misunderstanding. No version ended with reconciliation. The only thing left was documentation. When the knock finally came, I opened the door to 2 officers in the hallway, and behind them stood Adrian. He looked beautiful in the way men like him always seem to look when they are falling apart. Expensive coat, carefully undone hair, anger mistaken for magnetism. Vanessa stood beside him in cream trousers and a cropped jacket, arms folded, expression already annoyed to have been inconvenienced by someone else's consequences. Ma'am, the older officer said, clearly tired, we got a call about an illegal lockout. This gentleman says he lives here and you changed the code. I own this condo, I said calmly. He does not. He was my fiancé. He informed me by text last Thursday that he was leaving, not returning, and taking the ring. My attorney advised me to preserve the property and arrange formal retrieval of his belongings. I handed over the deed first, then my phone, the officer read. Then read it again. His eyes moved slightly as he scanned the messages. I watched the exact moment the tone of the situation changed for him. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just the tiny shift of a public servant realizing he had been invited into somebody else's very stupid civil disaster. He turned to Adrian. Sir, this text says you're not coming back. Adrian's jaw flexed. That was emotional, he said. She's twisting it. Vanessa let out a disbelieving breath. Seriously? We're doing this over wording? I looked at her then. Really looked. She was younger than me by a few years. Beautiful in that bright yet curated way that photographs well. She wasn't smug exactly. Not yet. More impatient. Like she thought this was an administrative mess, delaying the next chapter of her love story. She had no idea what she had walked into. He also informed me, I said evenly, that he was keeping the ring for his future. The older officer glanced at Adrian, and there it was. The ring, not on a finger, looped through a leather cord around his neck, half hidden beneath his shirt, as if carrying it close to his chest made him something other than absurd. The officer stared, then actually blinked. Vanessa turned her head sharply toward Adrian. You said she gave it back, she said. Nobody answered her. I did not miss the way her face changed in that instant. Not heartbreak, not outrage, calculation. Fast, embarrassed, and suddenly alert. The account for that ring, I continued, is in his name. He opened it himself. I had been making the monthly payments while we were engaged. He ended the engagement. I ended the payments. The officer's mouth tightened very slightly, the way people do when they are trying not to react too much in front of strangers. Vanessa stared at Adrian. Wait, the debt is yours? It's temporary, he said quickly. It's just until we sort this out. Interesting again. The younger officer exhaled through his nose and shifted his weight. Sir, the older one said, handing me back the phone, this is a civil matter. She owns the property. You need to coordinate retrieval of your belongings the proper way. Adrian stepped forward. So that's it? She can just lock me out? You stated in writing that you were leaving and not returning, the officer said. You've also got counsel involved from what she's saying. This is not a criminal issue tonight. Vanessa looked from him to me and then back to the ring visible against his shirt. Something cold moved through her expression. You told me it was paid for, she said quietly. No one answered. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow for all the truth in it. Adrian turned toward her. Vanessa. No, she said, don't. The officers were still there. The fluorescent hallway lights were flat and unforgiving. My neighbors were probably listening through their doors. And there he stood, caught between the condo he no longer had, the fiancé he discarded, and the ex-girlfriend who had just realized the romantic grand gesture hanging at his throat was actually financed. It was the first moment he looked less angry than afraid. Sir, the older officer said, with finality now, you need to leave the property. Adrian stared at me, and if I had not known him so well, I might have mistaken the look for pain. But it wasn't pain. It was disbelief. He genuinely could not understand why the old arrangement, his choices, my payment, no longer existed. Vanessa stepped back first, then farther. He noticed too late, and I understood, all at once, that this was not just the end of our engagement. This was the first crack in whatever fantasy he had built on the drive back from that hotel. Because love sounds different when interest starts accruing. The next morning, Daniel called before 9. I heard from building security, he said. You handled it well. I had help, I said. You had documents, he corrected. That's better. He told me to document everything from the previous night while it was still fresh. The exact time of the intercom, the exact time the officers arrived, what Adrian said, what Vanessa said, where the ring had been, how the officers responded, every detail. Especially Vanessa's reaction, he added. Why? Because if he misrepresented the financial situation to her, that matters strategically. Not legally, maybe, but strategically. I knew what he meant. Pressure points. Adrian's life had always been built on presentation. If the presentation cracked, the rest of it did not hold together well. I typed up 6 pages before lunch. By that afternoon, the fallout had started moving in smaller, uglier ways. Mail. A lot of it. Not mine. Adrian's. 2 bank envelopes, 1 fashion subscription box, a credit card offer, and a glossy catalog for luxury travel, all stacked inside the lobby mailbox with his name suddenly, conspicuously, back at my address. I stood in the elevator holding them and felt a cold kind of admiration. Of course, if he could not access the condo physically, he would try to reestablish himself on paper. A residency trail, a record, a way to later imply he still lived here, still received mail here, still had a place here. By the time I reached my floor, I was already taking photos. Daniel emailed back within 20 minutes. Do not open anything. Keep every piece. We'll mark them returned to sender and send formal notice. By the 3rd day after the police visit, the mail had become a stream. Store cards, membership notices, grooming subscriptions, financial statements. It was too consistent to be accidental. I lined everything up on the dining table where the wedding invitations had once sat and photographed each one in order. Different companies, same strategy, same entitlement. The next trick came 2 days later. An email from our wedding photographer. Her name was Elise. She had been warm, talented, expensive, and impossible to book on short notice. I almost deleted the message without reading it. I wish I had. Subject: thinking of you both. The email began kindly enough. She said she was sorry to hear about the cancellation. Then the tone shifted. Apparently, Adrian had contacted her. Apparently, he had explained the situation. Apparently, because the deposit was non-refundable, he had suggested it be repurposed toward a lifestyle shoot for him and Vanessa as they started this unexpected new chapter together. I read that line 3 times. A lifestyle shoot. With my deposit. I was still in my heels from work, standing in the middle of my kitchen, reading an email about funding soft-launch couple portraits for the man who had detonated my wedding by text. Elise wrote that she wanted to support healing, and thought this might be a beautiful compromise. I actually sat down because I thought if I stayed standing, I might break something. Then I forwarded the email to Daniel with 1 line. Is this real? His assistant replied 11 minutes later. Yes, we'll handle it. The response they sent was so clean it was almost elegant. The deposit was mine. It was not transferable. Any attempt to use my funds for Adrian's benefit would be considered improper conversion. The cancellation stood exactly as contracted. Elise apologized within the hour, profusely. She said she had been misled. Misled. That word kept appearing around Adrian like perfume after somebody leaves a room. The truth came in smaller fragments after that. One from Derek, who texted me late one night after apparently losing patience with the whole circus. Derek, I shouldn't be saying this, but Vanessa is furious. She didn't know the ring account was his. She thought you 2 bought it outright. I didn't answer. A minute later, another text. Derek, he told her you were being dramatic and withholding his stuff because you couldn't accept the breakup. That one I did answer. Me, interesting. He didn't reply after that. But I didn't need him to. I could see it now. Adrian sitting somewhere expensive, speaking softly, hand over face, constructing a gentler version of himself for Vanessa. A man trapped in an overreactive fiancé's legal performance. A man unfairly burdened by complications. A man who had followed his heart and was now being punished for honesty. He would have told it well. That was one of his gifts. Not lying, exactly. Curating. And maybe that worked for 48 hours. Maybe even for 4 days. But money is a vicious editor. By the next week, the numbers had started talking louder than he could. The missed payment turned into late fees. Late fees turned into interest. Interest turned into panic. I learned that, not from him, but from another blocked number call on a Wednesday night. I almost ignored it. Then answered. There was breathing on the line first. Then Vanessa. Her voice was tight, stripped down, and nothing like the woman in the hallway outside my condo. I'm not calling for him, she said. Then why are you calling? A pause. Because I want to know if he told the truth about anything. I leaned back slowly against the kitchen counter. The overhead light was on. The rest of the condo was dim. One half-packed box of Adrian's ties still sat by the wall, waiting for official retrieval. I looked at it while I answered. That depends what he told you. He said the ring was basically handled. He said the account was a formality. He said you were being vindictive because you were embarrassed. I smiled without humor. And now? And now, she said, the jeweler keeps calling. He's getting notices every day. He told me it would all calm down if you stopped acting emotional. That word again. Emotional. It was always amazing how men could set fires and then critique the smoke. The account is in his name, I said. He opened it. He wanted it that way. He said you encouraged it. I tolerated it. There's a difference. She went silent. I let her. I was not interested in comforting her. She had not owed me loyalty, and I knew that. But she had stood outside my condo in cream trousers like she was waiting for valet. She had looked at me like I was the inconvenience. That image had not faded yet. Finally, she said, "Do you hate him?" The question surprised me. Not because of the content. Because of the softness. I looked out the window at the city lights beyond the glass. No, I said. I think that would be easier. She breathed out slowly. I think he thought you'd keep paying, she said. I know. And if you had, he would have called that love. That sat between us for a second. Then she said very quietly, he told me he chose me. I closed my eyes. There it was. The center of it, not romance. Selection. Status. Validation. A woman as proof of something. He chose the version of his life that looked better in the moment, I said. That's not the same thing. She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 nights later, Derek sent one more text. Derek, they're fighting constantly. She found out what the ring would resell for. That got my attention. Me. And? A full minute passed. Then, Derek, around 30,000, maybe less. He owes way more than that. She's saying he lied. He's saying you trapped him. I read the last line twice, then once more. He's saying you trapped him. Of course he was, because that was always the final refuge of people like Adrian. If they could not escape consequence, they could at least rewrite authorship. Someone else made this happen. Someone else set the trap. Someone else turned their appetite into a punishment. Never mind that he chose the ring, opened the account, sent the text, left the city, kept the ring, threatened the police, redirected the mail, tried to hijack the photographer. None of that in his mind counted. By Friday, Daniel informed me Adrian's attorney had reached out. Formal demand letter coming. I read the message and felt something almost like anticipation. Not because I wanted more conflict, because I knew what it meant. The panic had moved from private to professional. He was running out of charm. And once people like Adrian run out of charm, they start putting their desperation on letterhead. The demand letter arrived on a Monday morning. Daniel forwarded it to me with a message that read, "Do not panic. Read when you have time. Then call me." Which, naturally, guaranteed I opened it immediately at my desk with a coffee I stopped drinking 3 lines in. There it was in legal formatting. My life, translated into numbered accusations and aggressive phrasing. Adrian was claiming unlawful exclusion from the residence. He was claiming emotional distress. He was claiming I had deprived him of access to his property, damaged his reputation, and interfered with his stability during a vulnerable transition. A vulnerable transition. I stared at that phrase until the letters stopped looking like language. There were 3 major demands. The first was housing-related. He claimed the lock change amounted to a wrongful eviction and that his text message had been sent in a state of emotional confusion, not true abandonment. He wanted compensation for alternative living costs and distress. The second was property. He claimed partial ownership of several items in my condo: furniture, the sound system, artwork, kitchen pieces, arguing they had either been gifts or jointly enjoyed assets. The third was the ring. That was where the letter crossed from insulting into almost operatic. He acknowledged that the jeweler account was in his name, but according to his lawyer, I had verbally induced him into opening it with a promise that I would make all payments regardless of future relationship status. He argued that canceling those payments was a form of financial bad faith that had damaged his credit and caused reputational harm. He demanded one of two outcomes: either I resume the payments immediately or provide a lump sum settlement to cover the account and associated damages. Damages for the ring he kept, for the future he reassigned, for the debt he chose. I read the letter twice. Then I called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. "So," he said mildly, "you've met Fantasy in 12-point font." I laughed despite myself. "I don't understand how someone writes this with a straight face." "Very easily," Daniel said, "especially when the client is paying by the hour and lying creatively." I leaned back in my chair and looked out the office window. Traffic below, heat shimmering off nearby buildings. A normal weekday continuing for millions of people who had not yet received a formal demand to finance their ex-fiancé's betrayal. "What matters?" I asked. "Not the performance," he said. "The documents." That became the structure of the week. Not feelings. Documents. Daniel built the response the way a surgeon builds an incision. Deliberate. Efficient. No wasted movement. For the housing claim, he attached Adrian's text messages, the timestamps, the wording, the part where he said he was not coming back, the part where he said Derek would collect his things, the part where he described leaving with Vanessa as already decided. Daniel also referenced the police interaction, noting that officers on site had treated the matter as civil and declined to intervene. For the property claim, Daniel requested specificity. Which items exactly? On what dates were they acquired? Through which accounts? What proof existed that they belonged to Adrian rather than to me, the sole owner of the residence who had purchased most of the contents before he even moved in? Then we attached receipts. So many receipts. The sofa from 2 years before we were engaged. The sound system from the first winter I lived there alone. The framed art from a gallery invoice with only my name. The dining chairs. The sideboard. The espresso machine. Then came the ring section. Daniel asked me to send every email, statement, and message connected to it. The original financing paperwork, screenshots of the recurring transfers from my account, the email I had sent immediately after Adrian's text ending the engagement. He arranged the timeline cleanly. Adrian opened the account himself for his own credit purposes. The debt was solely his. My payments were voluntary gifts made during the existence of an engagement. The engagement ended by his unilateral choice. The gifts ended with it. Then Daniel added the sentence that made me sit back and exhale. Your client cannot simultaneously retain the asset, repurpose it for his future, and disclaim the liability attached to it. That was it. The whole case in one line. Daniel ended the letter with a warning that any continued frivolous claims would expose Adrian to a countersuit for harassment and attorney's fees. He sent it Tuesday morning, and for 48 hours, the world went strangely quiet. No calls, no blocked numbers, no new demands, no redirected mail. No dramatic appearances, just silence. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like the pause after someone slips on polished stairs, but before the body hits the bottom. The call came Thursday night. Blocked number. I almost ignored it, then answered, breathing first. Then Adrian. Elena. I said nothing. His voice sounded wrong, not softer, not remorseful, thinner, stretched tight over panic. This has gone too far. I looked up at the ceiling above my bed. I was already in pajamas. One lamp on, hair loose, the condo finally beginning to feel like mine again in small practical ways. The blue mug on the nightstand, the book half read, the calm of a woman relearning ordinary space. Has it? I asked. Yes. He exhaled hard. You've made your point. My point. Not his decision. Not his lies. My point. I sat up. What point do you think I was making, Adrian? That you're angry. I laughed once. He hated that sound. You think this is about anger? What else would it be? There it was again. That astonishing, endless inability to imagine that anyone else's actions might produce their own consequences without being orchestrated as revenge. He kept going before I answered. Vanessa is upset. My mother is upset. My lawyer thinks you're escalating things unnecessarily. The jeweler is calling every day. That sounds exhausting. Elena. Now the edge came back. The warning tone. The one he used when charm failed and impatience took over. You know, I never would have opened that account if you hadn't agreed to the payment arrangement. That's not true. It is true. No, I said quietly. It isn't. You wanted the account. You wanted the status of the account. You wanted the story of the account. What you didn't want was the bill. He was silent. I could hear traffic wherever he was, a car passing, a horn somewhere far off. Not the coast then, not paradise. More likely parked outside his mother's house, or sitting in some borrowed apartment trying to salvage control from his phone. Then he said lower now, you could stop this tonight. What exactly would I be stopping? The damage. The damage happened Thursday at 11:17 p.m. That's not fair. I closed my eyes. Not fair. A phrase for children and men who still expected women to absorb impact as proof of love. What's not fair, I said, is ending a wedding by text, keeping the ring, and being surprised that the financing arrangement ended with the engagement. You're acting like I committed a crime. No, I'm acting like you signed a contract. His breathing changed. I knew that rhythm. He was losing his composure, but trying to sound composed anyway. Then, more quietly, you don't understand how bad this is getting. And there it was. The first honest sentence. Not I miss you. Not I'm sorry. Not I made a mistake. This is getting bad for me. I let the silence stretch until he had to sit inside it. Finally, I said, then you should have thought longer before telling me to enjoy the clean break. He hung up. The next morning, Daniel called with an update before I had even finished pouring coffee. They're wobbling, he said. How can you tell? His lawyer sent a much shorter email. What does it say? He wants to discuss practical resolution. I leaned against the counter. Meaning Adrian is running out of money. That tracked. By then, the late fee had posted. Interest had begun compounding at the penalty rate. If he had missed another payment, or even come close, the account would have started spiraling fast. That afternoon brought the next piece of fallout, a text from Derek. Derek, he tried to sell the ring. I stared at it, then typed, me, and 3 dots. Gone. Then back again. Derek, custom piece. No one wants to pay near what he owes. He's freaking out. I set the phone down slowly. So that was the shape of it now. He had kept the ring as a symbol, worn it like leverage, described it as future, built a fantasy around it. And the market had looked at all that performance and priced it like a used problem. By the 3rd week, everything started to speed up. Not outwardly. Outwardly, things actually got quieter. Fewer messages, shorter emails, less posturing. But underneath that surface, you could feel it. The structure he had been standing on was giving way, piece by piece. Daniel called it compression. When reality catches up to narrative, he said, it tends to do it all at once. I didn't need him to explain what that looked like. I could see it in fragments. A missed payment turns into 2. 2 turns into penalties. Penalties trigger automated notices. Not the polite kind, the persistent kind. Daily, sometimes twice daily. And the interest. That was the part people like Adrian never really understood. Interest doesn't feel like a decision when you sign the paperwork. It feels like background noise. Until it doesn't. By week 3, the account had crossed that threshold. I knew because Derek texted again. Derek, he's getting calls from collections now. I stared at the message. Collections. That was fast. Then again, it wasn't. Luxury credit doesn't operate on patience. It operates on pressure. Me, already? 3 dots. Then, Derek, he missed the 2nd payment. Penalty. APR kicked in. It's bad. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I could do the math. The original balance. The missed payments. The late fees. The interest rate spike. And the worst part? He still had the ring. Still physically holding the thing that was creating the damage. Still clinging to the symbol while the structure underneath it collapsed. 2 nights later, my phone rang again from a blocked number. I let it ring once. Twice. Then answered. This time it wasn't Adrian. It was Derek. His voice was low, tense, stripped of the casual tone he used when he thought everything would eventually smooth over. I shouldn't be calling you, he said. Then don't. Just listen for a second. I leaned back against the couch, eyes on the ceiling. Fine. There was a pause. Then, he tried to sell the ring again today. Again. So the first attempt hadn't worked. What happened? I asked. They laughed, Derek said bluntly. Not in his face, but close enough. Custom piece, niche design, no brand resale value. Best offer was under 30. 30. I closed my eyes. So he's what? I said quietly. 50,000 underwater? More now. Of course. Interest doesn't wait. And Vanessa? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. They're not good. Not good. That was one way to put it. What does that mean? I pressed. It means she didn't sign up for this, Derek said. She thought he had everything handled. She thought the ring was symbolic, not financed. Everyone loved the symbol. No one wanted the structure. She found out how much he actually owes, Derek continued, and how fast it's growing. And she's asking questions he can't answer. I almost smiled. Of course she was. Because once you strip away the presentation, what's left has to make sense. And Adrian had never built for sense. He had built for effect. What kind of questions? I asked. The kind where you have to tell the truth or invent something better, Derek said. And he's not good at either right now? No, that tracked too. Because charm works best when the stakes are low, when the room is controlled, when the audience wants to believe you. It does not work as well when someone is staring at you holding a liability that is actively destroying your financial life. What does he want from me? I asked. Derek let out a breath. That's the thing, he said. He still thinks you're going to fix it. I didn't answer, because there it was. Still, even now, even after the police, the lawyer letters, the canceled payments, the documented timeline, the exposure. Some part of Adrian still believed the story ended with me stepping back in. Not because it made sense, because it always had. She told him to call you, Derek added. Vanessa? Yeah, that surprised me. Why? Because in her head, you're still the variable that can change this outcome. I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny. Because it was so completely aligned with everything else. I wasn't a person in their story. I was a lever, a solution, a fallback. What did he say? I asked. He said you were being stubborn. Of course he did. And emotional. I shook my head slowly. Of course he did. There was a pause on the line. Then Derek said something softer. For what it's worth, I don't think he expected this. I sat up. No, I said, he didn't. He thought it would be messy, Derek went on, but temporary. He thought you'd cool down, or that you'd want to avoid drama, or that you'd protect him. Protect him. That word landed heavier than anything else. Because it was true. Not now, but before, for a long time. I had protected him. From inconvenience. From discomfort. From consequences. I had smoothed things over. Handled details. Absorbed pressure. Made sure his life looked clean from the outside. And he had learned from that. Not gratitude. Expectation. I'm not protecting him anymore, I said. I know. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Derek added, the civil standby is scheduled. My attention sharpened. When? Friday morning, 10 a.m. That was sooner than I expected. Is he coming? Yeah. And Vanessa? No. That told me everything I needed to know. She was already stepping back. Distance before detachment. His mom will be there, Derek said. And Becca. Of course. The support structure. The reinforcement. The witnesses. The people who could help him maintain the version of himself he still believed in. Even if only for a few more hours. Make sure everything is ready, Derek said. Boxes, inventory, no arguments. I already know. I figured. He hesitated. Then, Elena, just don't let him pull you into anything. I won't. He's different right now. I smiled faintly. No, I said. He's exactly the same. He's just out of room. After the call ended, I stood up and walked to the entryway. The boxes were already there. Not packed yet. Just stacked flat against the wall, waiting. I started that night, methodically. No rushing. No shortcuts. Clothes first. Then shoes. Then accessories. Each category separated. Folded. Placed. Labeled. There was something grounding about it. Taking chaos and turning it into order. Turning memory into inventory. By midnight, I had filled 6 boxes. By 2 a.m, 10. By the time I stopped, there were 14. 14 boxes of a life that had once been intertwined with mine. Now reduced to categories and tape. Friday morning arrived too quietly. No tension in the air. No dramatic buildup. Just light coming through the windows like any other day. I woke up before my alarm. Showered. Dressed in something simple, and tied my hair back the way I used to when I needed to think clearly. No makeup beyond what was necessary. No performance. No softness either. By 9:40 a.m., everything was ready. 14 boxes, stacked cleanly by the entryway. Labeled, itemized, ordered. Daniel arrived at 9:55. He stepped inside, glanced at the boxes, and nodded once. Efficient, he said. I wanted it done. That helps. At exactly 10 a.m., the knock came. Right on time. Daniel moved first, opening the door, just enough to step into the hallway. I stayed inside, where I belonged, where I owned. I heard voices before I saw faces. Adrian, Celeste, Becca. No Vanessa. Of course not. All right, the officer said, same one as before, voice already tired. This is a civil standby. We're here to make sure everything stays calm. Mr. Adrian, you and your party will retrieve your belongings from the entryway only. You do not enter further into the residence. No arguments, no escalation. You take your items and you leave. Understood? Murmurs of agreement. Daniel stepped aside just enough. I opened the door the rest of the way, and there he was. Adrian looked smaller. Not physically, but structurally. Like something inside him had collapsed, and the outside hadn't caught up yet. The coat was still expensive. The posture was still practiced. But the edges were off, wrinkled, unstable. Celeste stood beside him, perfectly composed, chin lifted, already scanning the apartment like she expected to find something she could object to. Becca hovered behind them, tense, eyes flicking between all of us like she was trying to calculate how bad this could get. Adrian didn't look at me at first. He looked at the boxes. All 14 of them. Stacked neatly. Final. That's it? Becca snapped. That's everything? Everything listed, I said calmly. Adrian's eyes moved then, slowly, from the boxes, to me. And for a second, I saw something real. Not anger, not performance. Recognition. That this wasn't temporary. That there was no version of this where he walked back in and resumed anything. That's not all my stuff, Celeste cut in sharply. He has more than this. Where are his other belongings? Daniel stepped forward slightly. Everything provided in the inventory list has been packed and is present. If you believe something is missing, you can submit a formal request. Her lips tightened. This is ridiculous. I need to check the bedroom. You will not enter the residence, Daniel said, still calm, per the officer's instructions. The officer nodded once, already done with the situation before it even began. She stepped back, but not happily. Becca started grabbing boxes. Adrian didn't move. Not yet. He was still looking at me, like he was waiting. For what, I didn't know. An apology. A softening? A signal that this was all just an overreaction that could be reversed if he said the right thing? I gave him nothing. He stepped forward finally, picked up one of the boxes, then another. Slow movements. Delayed. Like his body hadn't caught up to the reality his eyes were already processing. The hallway filled with the sound of shifting weight. Cardboard against tile. Elevator doors opening, closing, opening again. Trip after trip. No one said much. Until the last box. A smaller one. Jewelry. Personal items. The kind of things that don't look significant until they're all that's left. Adrian picked it up. Then stopped. He looked at it. Then at me. And finally spoke. You did this. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The accusation was already fully formed. I tilted my head slightly. Did what? His jaw tightened. You knew, he said. You knew I couldn't handle that debt without you. There it was. Not regret. Not responsibility. Blame. Clean. Direct. Certain. You let me take it on, he continued. You let me set that up. You could have stopped me. I felt something shift in me then. Not anger. Not even frustration. Just clarity sharpening into something final. You insisted on it, I said. That doesn't mean you had to agree. You wanted it. You should have said no. You wouldn't have listened. His eyes flashed. That's not the point. It is the point. His voice rose. You set me up. The words echoed slightly in the hallway. Celeste stepped closer to him. Support. Reinforcement. Yes, she said coldly, looking at me. You encouraged this arrangement knowing he couldn't sustain it alone. That's manipulation. I almost smiled. Because even now, even here, even after everything, they still needed me to be the architect of his choices. I paid $10,000 toward that ring, I said quietly, while we were engaged. And then you stopped, Adrian snapped. Yes, because you wanted to punish me. No, I said, because you ended the engagement. That's not how this works. That was the closest he got to breaking. Voice sharp. Control slipping. Reality refusing to bend back into something manageable. That's exactly how it works, I said. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. The officer shifted his weight slightly. Becca froze halfway to the elevator. Even Celeste didn't interrupt this time, because there was nothing left to interrupt. No angle. No reinterpretation. Just the truth sitting there, simple and unmovable. Adrian stared at me, and for the first time, really looked like he didn't recognize me. You were supposed to, he started, then stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I already knew how it ended. You were supposed to take care of me. You were supposed to fix this. You were supposed to absorb the damage. You were supposed to love me more than I respected you. I stepped back, just slightly, enough to create space. Physical, symbolic, final. You have your things, I said. Celeste exhaled sharply. Come on, she snapped. We're done here. Becca grabbed the last box. Adrian didn't move immediately, then finally turned, walked toward the elevator, slower than before. He didn't look back, not even once. The elevator doors closed, and just like that, it was over. The officer gave a short nod and left. Daniel adjusted his sleeve, glanced at me, and said, That's likely the last of it. Likely? There may be noise, but nothing with weight. He paused. She really believes you're the villain, you know. I know. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Doesn't matter. No, I said, it doesn't. He left. I closed the door, turned the lock, slid the chain into place. The sound was louder than it should have been. Final in a way nothing else had been. I stood there for a moment, then walked back into the living room. The space felt different again. Not empty, not quiet, just mine. No boxes, no tension, no waiting. I was still out $25,000. That hadn't changed. It probably never would. But for the first time since that Thursday night, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a price. And the thing about prices is that once they're paid, you don't owe anything anymore.